And welcome to another episode of Fresh Brewed Politics. I'm your host, Andrew Cooper Ryder here. I've got an amazing day planned for you guys. But before we get into anything else, I do want to take a second to express our condolences to Senator Buford's family. He was a longtime senator, I believe 24 years, for the 22nd district. That's the district right next to mine. Whether or not you always agree with his votes or his policies, regardless, he's a human with family. So just want to take a second to say we are sorry to the Bufords for their loss. And if any of the Bufords are watching this, feel free to reach out. And if we can do anything for you guys, if there's a funeral or something that we can send stuff to or help draw attention to show people's appreciation and condolences, please let us know. So we want to cover that before we go any further. But that being covered, feel free, go ahead and hit the share button if you're watching on Facebook. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and share that link out, please. If you're catching this as a replay, you can always check out the podcast that's available on Apple and Spotify if you're listening to this on the podcast form. Thank you for joining us. Tell some people about the podcast. If you're on Apple, leave a review. Once again, hit that share button for me, please. We all know Facebook has us on reduced distribution, and that has always hurt our podcast numbers, at least on Facebook, but we have picked them up elsewhere. But please hit that share button, and let's go into a couple of different things. Oh, first, another announcement here. Tomorrow night, I will be at Beans in Northern Kentucky for the Cultural Christian meeting. I invite you guys out there to check that out. We posted about that on our Facebook and Telegram and stuff, so feel free to check that out. Freedom Fest is at 6 o'clock this Friday at Brood's physical location in Lexington. If you can make it out to that, please do. We've got a couple of bands, a couple of food trucks, aerial performers booked, a bounce house, and a lot of different things. Some speakers coming out, big fun things. That's freedomfight.us/fest. If you want to RSVP, you don't have to, but if you'd like to, it is there. It gives us an idea of how many people are coming. Additionally, we want you to buy our coffee. The 17.76% off sale is going on. If you go onto our website, broodco.com, and you go to the shop, it's 17.76% off everything. That will be going on till the 15th. We were just going to do that for a day, but then our credit card processor said, nope, you are kicked out of here. They literally deplatformed us like 2 minutes before we sent out an email to everybody about it. So we've continued it till the 15th. If you're one of those people that went to check out and was unable to, come back onto the website, and we'll be happy to help you out there. So topics today, we're going to talk about the CRT debate in the Capitol. Attica Scott has announced she is primarying John old Yarmouth. I don't know. I hope that's how you say his name. And Yarmouth or Yarmouth, whatever, who cares? Anyways, the Democrat from Kentucky. And then the door-to-door vacciners, kind of talk about all of those things. So let's dig into it. So there was a great big CRT debate at the Capitol yesterday. All this over a bill that is prime author, I believe, is Matt Lockett. And that's BR 69. Now, I do have some issues with BR 69, but before we go into that, what is funny about the BR 69 debate is nowhere in the bill does the word critical or theory ever show up, or CRT. The bill in no way, shape, or form shows any at all mention of CRT, but yet that's what the debate devolved into. And there's a lot of interesting things that occurred in that hearing. But first, I want to talk about the bill itself, BR 69. There's things I like about the bill. There's things actually I don't like about the bill. One of the things I think that I don't like about the bill, just personally, is that I happen to know, I don't know Lockett super well. It's not like, he comes over to my house or anything, but I've talked to him a few times. He's his district is very close to mine. And he's stopped in and showed his support a few times, and we've had some conversations. He does a good podcast too, or he used to, called Lock It Up. I don't know if he still does it. I don't know if he was just messing around in podcasts, but I listened to a couple of them. They're pretty good, but informative, I guess, if you're a nerd, if you're into that stuff. But So he's the main author on this bill, and to understand that, one of Lockett's things he really likes is campus free speech. Okay, so he likes campus free speech. You'll probably see him sponsoring a bill around campus carry here very shortly. Of course, he likes school choice. He's all about educational choices and freedom. And so one of the things I don't like about BR 69, which is a pre-filed bill for 2022 that they held the hearing on, is that it seems to combine one of his priorities of campus free speech, which already has a bill passed, but he further plans to extend that with actual primary education. Now, the reason why I think that's a mistake on this bill is because I would never combine the two. I would never combine college and primary education. Part of the reason why is because, elementary school, middle school, high school, to a certain degree, is legally required to be provided by our state constitution, as well as it's legally required for people to go to it. So me personally, I would not have combined the two, because there's obviously going to be different legal arguments that goes into both of them. Obviously, when I'm required to go somewhere, there is a lot more legal argument about what you can do or can't do compared to if it's a choice. So it's a choice to go to college. And so in that way, there's a lot different legalities around requiring college teach this or that, or not allowing college to teach this or that, even in a public university, compared to with elementary schools. Because of course the argument could always be for colleges, well, if you don't like what they're teaching, you can just go to a different college. However, you do not have that same choice with primary education. You certainly don't have that same choice too, as well, with the fact that your tax dollars, whether you like it or not, are funding that education. Now, of course, colleges are somewhat tax controlled there. And the reason why that's important is there's some parts of the bill that talk about limiting of free speech on college campuses. There's some parts of the bill, well, it says campuses, but the bill is wrote to apply to both. And of course, there's some parts of it that just kind of seem odd, right, as far as electives go and things like that. And that's why I would have split them apart. I'm not against trying to take care of maybe this kind of situation and with this kind of bill, the problem that this bill specifically says and is dealing with, which I think is a good problem to be dealing with. I don't specifically have a problem with that. I just think splitting up the bill into two parts would make it hold up in court better, because of course, if this bill's passed, the leftist activists are going to come out and challenge it, and so on and so forth. But regardless, that's my issues with BR 69. I just think he should have split it up. Like I said, knowing where Lockett's priorities are, I think he just said, hey, I can get a lot of sponsors on this bill. I'm going to throw in something that maybe I can't necessarily always get a whole lot of sponsors on. And I think a couple of amendments may be able to fix this, but we'll see what happens there as far as the actual bill goes. But going back to the debate, despite the fact that the bill in no way, shape, or form says the word CRT, in fact, the bill actually says a couple of different things. Do you have the bill page there? I'd messaged it to you with saying, just show page 3. That's the main important part. Now, I encourage you guys to go to the bill. You can go to LRC's site and just pull up BR 69 and go through it. But I'm going to hit upon what is the major parts of it here. I'm not going to read it word for word. We're going to throw it up on the screen for you, so that way you can go ahead and peruse it as you can see the parts that I'm talking about as I'm speaking. And of course, guys, let me take another second here to please hit that share button, because I think this topic is incredibly important to discuss, especially as what we saw yesterday. It's of debate here in the state. This is something that people on both sides are activating on, so I feel it's important for us to have this discussion. So what the bill actually says and how this gets pulled into CRT, and we'll kind of talk about what CRT is a little bit here in a second. But what it essentially is saying is you cannot teach that a race, sex, or religion is somehow superior to another. And you cannot teach people that by virtue of their existence, that they are somehow bad or good. You cannot teach that one member of a race somehow is negative or positive. Basically saying, hey, you cannot teach based upon a immutable characteristic such as sex or race or religion, which isn't necessarily an immutable characteristic, but a race or religion and sex, all protected classes under our Constitution. You cannot teach anything that would discriminate against it. And I think overall, that's very straightforward. I mean, you have people on the left that are coming out against this bill, and what it literally is saying is that you can't teach people that one race is better than another. I'll put it to you this way. This piece of legislation to me, and you guys can feel free to disagree, but this piece of legislation to me reads just like civil rights legislation from the 60s. It reads just like it. It literally does. I mean, you look at it and there's parts of it where it says an individual by virtue of his race, sex, or religion bears responsibility for actions committed in the past by other members of the same race, sex, or religion. I mean, any individual should feel discomfort, guilt, anguish, or any other form of psychological distress on account of his or her race, sex, or religion. I mean, it literally reads like a liberal bill to me. I mean, if you rewind a couple decades, this bill reads just like a liberal bill. But I think it is very clear here that what Lockett has done is he did this on purpose. Lockett purposefully, I believe, and I do believe Lockett wrote most of this bill. Most of the time you have legislators don't really write a whole lot of their bills. I think Lockett was heavily involved in the writing of this bill, just because reading how it was wrote, I think it was a part of it. I think he had a lot of part of it. But I think, what it is it's very intelligent to leave out the words critical and in theory, and to literally just be saying, hey, you can't teach that a race, sex, or gender or religion race, sex, or religion is somehow better than another. And now that's what you're fighting against, right? But that's inherently kind of what CRT teaches. And what you'll see is, first, you'll see the attacks on this being twofold. So what they're saying is this is a anti-CRT bill. That's what they're saying it is. All right. Now, I can say, well, I guess if CRT needs to teach that an individual should be discriminated against because of their sex, race, or religion, if that is what CRT teaches, then I guess that's against it, right? But let's talk about that for a second. So two of the defenses that we're hearing is, one, you don't even know what CRT is, right? Now, I'll give you guys a great example, because unlike a lot of the people who say I don't know what CRT is, I have read the book Critical Race Theory, an Introduction. I have actually read the book. Okay. I've read a lot of the original papers where it kind of started. And basically the premise of it, and you'll hear people who are for CRT talk about how like Brown versus Board of Ed was the worst. But the premise of it is basically that if the outcome is somehow disproportionately affecting people of a certain race, then that means the entire thing itself is racist. So let's say there's a law, and let's say the law is farm owners have to have a license to grow corn, which is probably a real law. Okay. But let's say there's a law that says farm owners have to grow corn. Well, the outcome of that law is going to result in the large majority, and I'm saying this because of the current court case that's going on with the USDA, over the relief funds Biden put aside, but specifically only for black farmers, because black farmers are underserved and they're not represented high enough. So I'm not saying that black people can't be farmers. I'm saying they should be farmers. I'm just saying I happen to be aware there's not a lot of black people who are farmers based upon this court case that's currently going on. So let's say I make a law that says corn farmers have to have a license. Well, if almost 100% of those individuals that end up getting enforced against are white, does that mean the law, you have to have a license to farm corn, is racist? Well, no, it's not. It just so happens that a lot of white people tend to be farmers because a lot of white people tend to live in rural areas. Now, why is it that this is spread out this way? Well, of course, that has to do with, and this is where it gets a little murky, I think, because there is obvious racism of the past that has caused minorities to be in places where they get offset by certain laws. So for an example, if the racist redlining policies of the past have caused, for example, black people to be in the inner cities more. So if there's a law that affects people in the inner city more, it is naturally going to affect black people at a higher rate because of racist prior occurrences. Okay. So the law itself isn't racist, but the reason why it affects everybody, the reason why the people who are mostly affected by it happen to be a minority, is not because of their skin color, but most of the time a law affecting somebody differently because their skin color has more to do with their geographical location than it does have to do with their immutable characteristics, such as skin color. Now, like I said, the location they're in can be traced back to racism that has occurred historically, but isn't occurring now. And the problem is when you sit there and say that this racism of the past has caused them to be, has caused minorities to be more clumped together in inner cities, and now they're being offset by these laws. Well, the only way to fix it is one of two things. You either get rid of the laws, which, as we're seeing playing out in these leftist cities, is not going well, or we have to force minorities to move. That's the only options here. And so when we look at CRT, right? So let's look at a law. So I just described the farming law. Now CRT would look at that and say, well, that is affecting white people more. Now CRT doesn't believe white people can be bigoted against, racist again, whatever. Anyways, CRT doesn't think white people can be victims, right? But let's go back to a law that CRT would look like. So let's say a great example of a CRT issue that recently came up, actually in Fayette County Public Schools, was regarding attendance issues. So there's an issue regarding punishment for attendance, and it seemed to be affecting minorities at a higher rate than the white people, because white people, if you're not a minority, you're white, right?
Yes, by default.
By default. Okay, so minorities covers like everybody that's not white, right?
Essentially. I think that's the modern definition.
Man, that kind of sucks. Like if I was a minority, I'd be like, why am I being grouped together with everybody else like that? Like white people get their whole entire majority. Meanwhile, all of us are in this little minority group. Well, not little. It's actually bigger. I think the minority might be bigger than American. Anyways.
Not a minority majority yet, but it's close.
It's close. It's getting close. Okay. Anyway, sorry guys. Distracted. Anyway, so it was affecting minority children at a higher rate than white children. So they said, well, that is a racist policy. But the policy itself never once said a word in it that said minorities must be given XYZ punishment. It just so happened that it happened out that way. That doesn't mean the policy is racist. See, CRT would hold that policy as racist because of the outcome. Traditional thinking says that, well, CR would say a law is only racist if it literally says the words minorities or, you know, black people can't get this treatment for not showing up to school. White people get this. That would be racist. No matter who looks at it. Because, and the reason why I bring that up is because one of the common misconceptions I see going around is they're talking about how during the World War II, this is a post I saw. I don't know if you saw this post, Nick, but there's this post I saw about the GI Bill that was given out after World War II. And the GI Bill, it says, history would say that soldiers received the GI Bill for World War II. Looking at that through the CRT lens would say that black soldiers were unable to use their GI Bills because of this law, that law, or this law, right? Or I don't know if they just, that's a post going around. Have you seen that post? No, you haven't. Okay, I've seen that post. And I actually come and I go, no, that's not true. If the physical actual law said black people can't own this home, such as a racist redlining policy, that isn't looking at things through a CRT lens. That's looking at things just straight up historically. But yet they're changing that because if you say, I don't want you teaching CRT, they're going to say, well, then you don't want us teaching about the true and actual racist policies of redlining. Like, no, that isn't accurate because that is history. That was literally a racist law. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about this belief that laws that aren't explicitly racist are racist. I'll give you an example of how this manifests itself. Or I'm sorry, let me give you an example of how this shows up in education. So they extrapolate that idea forward. And what they say is because you were born white, the system, because you don't have unequal outcomes with this, the system is built in your favor. And they tell to minority children because the system was built by white people, and because it was not built with you in mind, it was built specifically to hold you back. It is harder, I guess, for you to succeed because it was built by white people. But then, so you say, okay, well, let's look at that. So we look at the system of capitalism, and there's quite a lot of minorities who turn out very well financially. In fact, white Americans is only the 4th or 5th most successful financially group in America. I believe there's a Middle Eastern group, and there is Asians and Middle Easterners, Indians from India, actually make more money than white people do. So if the system was built for white people, there's 3 or 4 groups of minorities that actually do better than white people do in this country. And so that doesn't make a whole lot of sense when you frame that in to say, well, you can't be successful. But what it does, and more dangerously, is it says, well, our system rewards things like possibly, let's say, hard work or showing up on time and things like that. Well, you'll see this extrapolated out to mean that, well, showing up on time and capitalist ideas. And now for you to say, well, does CRT say capitalist? Yes, it does. You get about 4 or 5 paragraphs into the first chapter of critical race theory and introduction, and it starts talking about the capitalistic structure is racist. Okay. And so when you start looking at those types of things, the capitalist structure is racist. And I think it's 4 paragraphs in. Somebody can fact check me. I think it's 4 or 5 in that they talk about the capitalist structure being built by white people. What you're saying is the capitalist structure, because you're a minority, you can no way take advantage of. And what that is telling minorities is they can't succeed. And what it's telling white people, white kids, is that they are inherently going to do better and they should feel guilty about it. However, that doesn't actually play out well. We all know when you look at individuals are successful or not successful. We actually know one of the biggest indicators of success is not necessarily geographical location, because of course people can move. But one of the greatest indicators of success is, do you have a mother and father, or 2-parent? We'll say 2-parent. We'll take the mother-father thing out of it. We'll just say 2-parent. Do we have a 2-parent household to raise the child? So that's one of the indicators of your financial success. Will you finish high school? That is an indicator of financial success. And third, will you have a child before or after you get married? That's an indicator of financial success. Now, nowhere in anything did I say did it mention skin color. What it does happen, though, is because of historic issues, inner cities, which is predominantly minority, have issues with those 3 things. But do you know who else has a lot of issues with those 3 things? Poor white Appalachia. And when you look at poor white Appalachia, right, that's Appalachian Mountains, like Eastern Kentucky. When you look at poor white Appalachia and you look at the inner cities and you see those lining up like that, and you see those 3 indicators are the key indicators of success, what you very quickly say is that you can't sit there and say the system is racist. Not when you remove skin color, you even remove geographical location, and you just look at those 3 indicators and it indicates success. And I think it's very dangerous and wrong for us to be teaching our kids anything but that. If we know those are the 3 indicators for success, that is what we need to be teaching our children. We shouldn't be teaching our children about a variety of different things, such as, well, because white people owned slaves 300 years ago, you now, Jimmy, will never succeed in life, which is the implication. There's this great movie called The Invention of Lying, and I love to reference it whenever I'm talking about gender issues or I'm talking about some of these race issues. And in the Invention of Lying. In the movie Invention of Lying, it is a world where nobody can lie. Ricky Gervais is the main character. Nobody can lie. And where nobody can lie, one day Ricky Gervais, playing his character, I don't know what the main character's name is, discovers he can lie. And one of the funniest scenes is he's like doing like 55 and a 25. He's pulling over for a cop. Cop says, you're doing 10 over the speed limit. And Ricky Gervais's character responds by saying, no, I wasn't. And the cop goes, okay, have a good day, and just turns and walks away. Doesn't even argue with him on it. Why? Because the idea of lying never crossed their mind. I know it's very difficult, but what we see is for kids, it is a learned thing that skin color matters. Because we don't see kids referencing skin color all that often. It is a learned thing. They reference the child's by their name. They reference their kids by other characteristics. They really, the skin color doesn't really cross their mind as much. Part of it is because, they don't even realize it's an issue. And so if we don't even bother, and this was the idea of Martin Luther King when he first spoke. And so you're seeing a lot of the people who have issues with CRT coming out saying, we just want we want to achieve Martin Luther King's dream, which is that we could all stand hand in hand as equals. Now, once again, though, CRT looks at equity, looks at the equity of outcomes, looks at, do we have equal outcomes? We're talking about equal opportunities. And granted, I'm not saying there's no work to be done to provide equal opportunities. It is a difficult question. How do we as a society, not government, but as a society, make up for the fact that historically this community hasn't had, whether that's poor white Appalachia or poor minorities in inner cities, they haven't had key indicators. They haven't finished high school. They haven't been able to be raised by two parents, a true privilege you are born with to have a good set of parents. How do we make up for that? I don't think government does it either, because government has no idea how to tailor make a policy. I think that is something we have to look at as a society. Somebody asked, how would CRT look at affirmative action? Well, CRT looks at affirmative action obviously is going to be very for it. I mean, affirmative action literally states, well, because we got to make up for racial and prior inequities, we have to give a help to individuals so they can come onto it, instead of looking at people and saying, why does their race even matter, right? One of my favorite lines I see is people talk about all the time how people won't hire people or won't give interviews to minorities as much, to which my question is, why do we even have the minority question then on the application? Does that really matter, right? If that's supposedly the case, which I don't know how you possibly control for that, but if that's really the case, why do we even leave it on our applications to begin with? Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And the other thing I wanted to bring up when it came to equity too, one of the evils of equity is that it doesn't allow for personal decisions. Charlie Kirk said this once when I was at a thing he was speaking at, and he said, if I gave everybody in this room $100, and I said, come back tomorrow, what everybody had done with that $100 would be different. You may have spent it. I may have saved it. You could have bought this. You could have bought that, whatever. And if I say, come back tomorrow, maybe you invested it. I say, come back tomorrow and let's see where you're all at. If I demand everybody comes back tomorrow having done the same thing with that $100, what I've done is I've taken away their ability for personal choice, personal decision-making. But if I'm allowing them to make their own decisions and just watching what turns out, that is how I respect the individuals and the individual's choices. And that's the real issue I have with CRT. I don't have an issue with CRT necessarily in the sense of necessarily the racial side of things. I don't think it's good for us to be talking to our children about race and teaching them per se that race matters, me personally. But I think more importantly, CRT talks about equity too much. And anything that talks about equity, equal outcomes, is robbing people of personal decision-making. And I think that's the real issue here. But through that CRT hearing that happened up at the Capitol, what we discovered was that nobody has any clue who actually sets the curriculum for our schools. That's a real thing that happened. They talked about the on-site councils set it, but then the on-site councils were like, I don't know what you're talking about there. We allow the teachers to express themselves, and there's a whole lot of things. All we know is that CRT isn't being taught, but somehow they're against this bill, but yet this bill never mentions CRT, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Okay, going into the next thing. Attica Scott wants a primary Old Yarmouth. Before I go into that, please, if you could go ahead and hit that share button for me, share it out. We're digging into the information today and having a grand old time. So hit that share button if you're listening on the podcast. Turn to somebody and say, hey, listen to Fresh Brewed Politics. Send out a text. Don't do it while you're driving. Wait till you get to a stop sign and then send it out, and then wait to be honked at to move forward, because nothing says I care about others like staying too long at green lights. Anyway, so moving on. Attica Scott wants to primary John Yarmouth. Now, as I dug into, I wanted to dig into it, and there's some interesting points here. First, we have to remember is it is a redistricting year, and sorry, it is a redistricting year, which that gets interesting too. Now, Yarmouth hasn't had a primary opponent in the last 3 elections, I believe. He's had a primary opponent in the last 3 elections. And what this offers is an interesting opportunity for the Republican Party. So first, it is redistricting time. And in the last election, which don't get me wrong, it was a very fraught election, high turnout, right? In the last election, high turnout, Yarmouth went up against Rhonda Palazzo, okay? And Rhonda Palazzo, I'm going to be honest, the GOP did not put much support behind Rhonda. They did not think she would do well at all, and so they didn't put much support behind her. So she did lose, but and John was able to take 62% of the vote, and Rhonda took 37% of the vote. But what's interesting, which is a slight tick up from 2018 in that election, and that was a slight tick up from 2016. Not much of a tick in general, but one of the things to understand is that the polling on left isn't doing as well, especially the far left. People are kind of scared about it. People could say that, well, you know, Yarmouth will go ahead and do well, but here's the thing: there wasn't a third option in that. And so 37.3% voted for Rhonda Palazzo. You can only really lose more people. Now, for those who don't know who Rhonda Palazzo is, she is, I'm not going to call her far right, but she's pretty far right. I mean, she is not a middle of the road candidate for sure. But yet we have Yarmouth. He's more of the centrist look for people, especially compared to Rhonda. But now you throw Attica Scott up there, and you look at how people are responding to the leftist policies that are going on, and you start to say, hey, is there and it's redistricting. Is there a possibility here that we are going to be able to flip that seat red? Because if Attica Scott wins, she's far enough left. Remember, she got arrested during the BLM riots. And while obviously Louisville is very far left, I'm not going to say it's not. I know a lot of people are very upset about the property damage and the constant city issues going on with Louisville, especially out of Democrats. In fact, the current mayor is under quite a lot of fire, one of which for handling on both sides, for his handling of the BLM riots. And more importantly, too, and this is when you look into Attica Scott and her entire looking at, assuming, I think she was a city council, and I don't see anything there for city council. I'm seeing a little bit from farther back, but city council, she has not ever faced a Republican general opponent. She has never had to go up against a Republican opponent. Why do I think that's important? Well, you don't know how to attack a Republican opponent and without making yourself look crazy sometimes. If you've never done it, you don't know. I mean, these are people who walk in and they do interviews and they literally say every single Republican is racist. You cut a proper ad with her saying that, where she has said that. I've heard her say it. Every Republican is racist. You cut an ad, you're not just getting every single Republican to turn out, which is already going to turn out at a very high rate. But additionally as well, there's a lot of people out there who know Republicans and know they're not racist. And they also want that unity factor. That's a big point going forward. The middle wants to feel like the country isn't being torn apart. And when you have somebody like Attica Scott that is not a centrist figure, that tears apart people, that divides people, and doesn't bring them together, it certainly opens up that seat for a lot of opportunity, I believe, for the Republican Party, especially with redistricting. Yarmouth himself hasn't had a primary opponent in quite some time. So it will be interesting. That is one I'm going to watch and be interested in. I might even go out and knock some doors for the Republican general candidate once we get there, especially if Attica Scott wins, because there is quite an opportunity, possibly, maybe, with some great door knocking and if we push forward to be able to take that seat. Possibly. It's a shot. It's a 1 in a million shot, I know, but it certainly opens up a lot more possibilities and a lot crazier things have happened. Plus, we can't have the DSA, Democratic Socialists of America, grabbing another seat in the Congress. I'm sure Attica Scott would join the squad just like that. So definitely worth watching there. Finally, Joe Biden and Jen Psaki announce they're going to be going door to door. They're going to be going door to door. Let's go ahead and play that excerpt of what Jen Psaki had to say about this the other day.
And respond to hotspots. The president will outline 5 areas
pause it real quick?
His team is focused on.
Is it just me, or does she always wear like the same outfit?
I think it's the same outfit.
Or is it just she like? I'm not trying to make fun of outfits. I mean, guys get away with wearing the same suit days and days and days out. So let me be very clear. It's just every time I see her, I swear she's wearing that same outfit. That's all. I was just curious if you'd noticed it too. If anybody else has noticed it, that's unfair of me. It's unfair of me to say that because, of course, I wouldn't notice if a guy was wearing the same black suit. But I was just curious. Anyways, let's go on.
To get more Americans vaccinated. 1, targeted community by community door-to-door outreach to get remaining Americans vaccinated by ensuring they have the information they need on how both safe and accessible the vaccine is. 2, a renewed emphasis on getting the vaccines to more primary care doctors and physicians, something that we've seen.
All right, so they say they're going to come door to door. Now, this leaves a lot of questions. Let's first talk about who is going to come door to door. Are they going to come door to door with the vaccine? Are they just going to come door to door to come knock on your door? I mean, you got to ask them too. What they're saying is they're saying, I am going to try to use at least peer pressure. I'm going to knock on the door and have somebody confront you about things. Now, here's part of the problem, okay? The chances are, what do you think the chances are? I'm dead serious, and I think this is a common misconception. There's been done a lot of studies on this that find people who are conscientiously saying they don't want to get that. They're saying it because they've done the research on it, or at least research that they've read on it. So that becomes a problem in that what are these people who come at the door, okay? Knock at your door, like, hello, and they're like, hi. Have you been, I'm not going to say the word because Facebook will kill my distribution. Have you been done that to you before? Let's come up with a code word for this. Redded? Poked. Okay, we'll say poked. Have you been poked before? That sounds dirty. Are they door-to-door prostitutes? Anyways, have you been poked? And so they come up and they're like, hey, have you been poked? And do they think, like, in the same way, okay, you never debate somebody who knows more than you. And what do you think the chances are these people coming to the door know more than the person who's answering the door who has specifically chosen to not get poked? What do you think the chances are? I've got a feeling that they're going to come at the door and people who've not got poked will be like, well, you know, this study, yeah, that may be true, but yeah, you know, these companies that produce the poked have never once came out and said getting poked is better than not getting poked if you've already been actually poked by the actual thing you're getting the poke to protect yourself against. The hoops I jumped through. But if they say that, what is going to be the response? Well, the CDC says you should still get poked. The poke police says you should still get poked. Like, what are they going to do? Because there isn't data for that. That's why Thomas Massey brought it up. That's why Rand Paul's brought it up. There isn't data to push back on that point. If anything, what you're asking for, this is what you're asking for. You ready? You send people door to door. You're asking for a series of viral videos of people owning the poke police at the door. That's the first thing you're asking for. That's the first reason why it's a bad plan if you're just going door to door to try to educate people. It's going to make you look bad. Because until they produce a study stating that getting poked is better than actually getting poked by the thing you're protecting yourself from getting poked. Until they produce that study with that data, they've got a big problem. I mean, that's one of the number one reasons why people won't get poked. So what are they going to come up with there? I don't know. I don't know what their response is.
Well, they can just threaten to put you in the pokey.
That was so stupid. Anyways, that was a terrible pun. But what, I mean, that's the first issue, right? I mean, and then second thing, of course, are they going to be bringing the poking equipment with them to poke you at the door? If so, I mean, that's an issue, right? Next, I've got to ask too, as well, as we're talking about the poke police poking you. What is their attempt to peer pressure you into it? I mean, I got to imagine what they're saying. So you have 67%, which, by the way, a large percentage of people have already came out and said, like, I forget what the study said that I read about. It's like 27% of people who have gotten poked literally only got poked because their work or somebody felt like they're making them do it. The vast majority have said that a lot of young people that have gotten poked have said it is because they felt like it was going to be required anyways at some point. They might as well just do it now. I mean, those are real things that people are saying. I mean, you have articles where people are saying that. I mean, I was reading earlier this year, I did a podcast about it, an article where this college student's literally saying, I'm going to be forced to take it anyways. I'm just going to take it. And they're not far off from the truth. I mean, that looks like the way it's going, right? And so you're trying to get as much compliance as possible. I think this is the overall goal, okay? Follow me here, all right? Follow me here. Okay. You have corporate companies, okay? And they want to full on require the poke. All right. So the idea is that they can't require the poke until they get full approval. Okay. If you can't require the poke until you get full approval, but you don't want to create this huge backlash, your goal is if I can get 80% of people poked, 85%. And right now, supposedly they're at 70. Though I'm gonna be honest with you, not to get a little conspiratorial, but I feel like some of those numbers are made up. I don't know. Do you trust that number on how many have been poked? They say it's 69%. Do you trust that?
I think that sounds way too high, because I don't think I know even 40% of the people that I know. I don't think they've been poked at this point.
But at the same, well. Are we in an echo chamber?
I'm sorry. I would say 40% of the people I know have been poked.
Are we in an echo chamber then? I mean, we could. I mean, you see what I'm saying? I mean, if we're in an echo chamber where we're just surrounded by people that aren't getting poked, but at the same hand, like I don't see that. I don't see the data though working out that way. I mean, look. So
I mean, you've got this Delta variant running amok. So either people haven't been poked, or the poking isn't working.
Well, and what's funny too is on the Delta variant, they're saying that 25% of the people who are catching it are children, but that would make sense because I believe. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. I believe they're not reporting people who've gotten it that have been poked the same as they're reporting people who haven't been poked getting it. But also, if the poking works at all, wouldn't it make sense that the group that hasn't been eligible to get poked would be getting it more at a higher percentage? That doesn't mean they're dying though, because they're not. I mean, you know how I know people that children are not dying or having particularly hard outcomes compared to before under the Delta variant. You know how I know? I know because it's not the headline every single day. If that was happening at all, it would be the headline every single day. Every single day, it'd be the headline. I can't think of when it wouldn't be, personally. But, I mean, look. So Bashir said 2.5 million getting the poke. If I look at where we're at right now for the poke, let's see here. Poking percentage here. See your state's progress. Google used to have a really nice graph that would tell you this.
I think the numbers are just so convoluted now that they're not even going to try to centralize.
Okay, so they're saying 49.9% of the population have gotten poked. So that is only half. What is that? Half, right? I mean, Kentucky's farther to the right, don't get me wrong, but a lot of states are. You know what I mean? I don't quite see. But then again, keep in mind the far blue states have a lot more people in it. And I don't know. They're getting way crazy things. You saw that.
Governor Newsom's threatening to shoot you at dawn if you don't get vaccinated. So obviously that state's going to have a pretty high vaccination rate. What's California at?
It's high. Let's see. Well, also too, you have, Governor Cuomo is declared that state of emergency on guns. I guess is an excuse to take away your guns. Here we go. Okay, California is at 62% at least. There's no way it's 69% worldwide. Not if California is at 62% poked and only 50.5% fully. There's no way. Let me look at New York real quick. New York's at 60.5 as well. So New York's also at 60, not at 62. Where are they getting 69% from?
You would have to have a hell of a lot of states at like 80-something% in order to offset that population.
Hold on, let me show all. Hold on a second. Okay. So as of July 6th, according to Google, 55.6% of the population has had one poke. At least one poke, okay? 48% have been fully poked, all right? But when I read the articles on Joe Biden's 4th of July goal, let's see here. So when I go on ABC and I read about Joe Biden's 70% poke goal, Seattle just hit 70% on June 11th. That's interesting. When I looked at that story, it had come up with saying it was 69%. 67%. There, yeah, okay. Listen, I don't know where this come from. Okay, so this is on Newsweek. Okay, article is Joe Biden misses poke goal, except they said the real word. Caution not to oversell and underdeliver. They said after the talk turned to a benchmark of 70% of U.S. adult populations poked, a goal that has been missed. According to Center for Disease Control, 67% of adults across the country have had at least one poke. Maybe they're talking about just adults, and that's saying the entire population. Maybe that's the confusion. But still, man, that seems really high. Like I said, we could be in an echo chamber. and I'm fully aware that I could be in the echo chamber, and I stay aware of that as much as I can. But that just seems really high, and it seems like they are heavily slowing down. And also, too, if they were progressing well to the 70% mark, why are they going door to door? Why are they talking about doing it? Now, obviously, they're going to be targeting urban areas that have low amount of vaccinate. I said the word poke rate.
You already said it once, so Facebook killed your distribution.
When did they do that? Nick watches the number, so he sees that it.
Yeah, because you said the V rate word like 3 minutes ago, and they just stopped distributing the.
That's why you guys got to share this out. Anyway, so
Zuck's watching.
The point is that going to the point, they're going to be going door to door. What's that mean? Are they coming with the kits? Are they coming out to inform? How's it going to look when they lose the debates? All I know is don't come to my house. Like, don't knock on my door. I don't want you knocking at my door. Who the heck wants somebody knocking at the door being like, let's discuss your medical history? Like, it's like, come on, man. Who wants that? Name another time, too, that we've done it. And people are like, oh, it's just outreach. Oh, it's all okay. First off, it's a waste of taxpayer dollars. Second off, when you start paying attention to as well, this is what makes it way more anonymous. When you start paying attention to certain things as well, not like crazy things. Like, if you listen to like Joe Rogan's podcast like I do, he has on some poke experts sometimes. And you start listening and people who are COVID experts. And you start listening to what they're saying. And you start putting a couple of things together. I don't know. Like I said, I certainly am curious on how the response will be. Now, of course, I absolutely have no issue with people getting poked that want to get poked. I don't care. If you want to get poked. For me, I'll be honest with you. If they can produce several studies that like Massey and Rand are asking for that prove that getting poked has a discernible benefit that is vastly farther and better than having actually gotten it naturally and developing those immunities, like vastly better, where it's worth the risk and you get an improvement, I would consider it possibly at that point. But until you produce that data, there's no way I'm considering it at all. Because I've had COVID already. Why would I take it for it if there's no data saying I need to? I don't know. I mean, that's just me. I don't know. You guys tell me what your issues are. That's just me talking. I'm just talking normal stuff. I have my other reservations. But anyways, they're coming door to door to talk to you. Give them the old Southern welcome. Give them the old Southern welcome. I myself will be setting up speakers on my property that will play banjo music whenever somebody walks onto it. A little I'm joking. Okay, that is.
If Biden comes to your doorstep, make sure you help him step up, or else he might fall down. So,
you know what? I'll just go upstairs.
Come and get me.
Don't slip. All right, guys. Thank you so much for your day. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for listening. Please share this out. Share it with your friends and family members. Share it with everybody. We thank you for joining us. And go to broodco.com, and we'll see you Friday if you're coming out to the event. Thank you.